Zola Ndlovu had always felt different in her own family in Durban. She was darker than her sister Ayanda, quieter at gatherings and never really the favorite. Growing up, she noticed the small things. The way relatives praised Ayanda's beauty, the way her father Mandla would proudly introduce Ayanda first. Zola learned to smile and stay silent. She told herself it didn't matter. Family was family. But everything changed at her father's 60th birthday party. The house was full of guests. Relatives, neighbors, even some of Mandla's business partners. Music was playing, glasses were clinking and everyone was laughing. Ayanda suddenly stood up with a bright smile and tapped her spoon against her glass to get attention. She said she had a special surprise for her little sister. People clapped, thinking it was something sweet. Ayanda handed Zola a beautifully wrapped gift box. Zola felt nervous but tried to smile as she opened it. Inside was a DNA test kit. For a second she didn't understand. Then Ayanda laughed and said loudly, "Now we can finally find out who your real father is." The room went completely silent. Some people gasped. Others started whispering. A few even pulled out their phones to record. Zola felt her face burn with shame. Her hands were shaking. She looked at her father, hoping he would say something, stop it, defend her. But he just stood there, frozen. In that moment, Zola felt her heart break in front of everyone. It wasn't just a joke. It was an attack. And it was done by her own sister. The humiliation didn't end when the party lights went off. In fact, that was only the beginning. The next morning, Zola woke up to silence. No good morning messages. No supportive texts. Her phone felt heavy in her hand. When she tried calling her aunt, the call rang and rang with no answer. Another cousin sent a short reply, "We'll talk later." But later never came. By the third day she could feel it. People were avoiding her. At the grocery store, a family friend who had known her since childhood looked at her with pity instead of warmth. Two women standing near the entrance lowered their voices when she walked past. One of them whispered, "You know, Nomusa was very friendly back then." The other replied, Some things stay hidden for years." Zola's chest tightened. Her mother, Nomusa, had passed away 5 years ago. She had been kind, soft-spoken, and deeply respected in the community. Zola had never once questioned her loyalty or her love for her husband, Mandla. But now those whispers were crawling into her mind. Was there something she didn't know? Was her whole identity built on a lie? She hated herself for even thinking it. At night, she lay awake replaying the party over and over again. Ayanda's smile. The laughter. The way the room had gone silent. It didn't feel like a joke anymore. It felt planned. Calculated. Ayanda had chosen the biggest stage possible. Their father's 60th birthday, with relatives and business partners present. She had made sure everyone would see it. Everyone would talk. Doubt is like poison. It spreads slowly. It doesn't scream, it whispers. And Ayanda had planted it perfectly. Zola started questioning small memories from her childhood. The time she felt left out. The comments about her darker skin tone. The way some relatives would say, "She doesn't look like the rest of you." Back then she ignored it. Now every word came back louder. But one question kept repeating in her mind. Why? Why would her own sister try to destroy her identity like this? This wasn't simple sibling rivalry. This was public humiliation. This was character assassination. No one does that without a reason. Plus, Ayanda believed there was something to gain. And that thought scared Zola more than the DNA test itself. The more Zola thought about it, the more everything started to make sense. This was never just about family drama. It was about power. The Ndlovu family didn't just own a small business. They owned one of the fastest-growing logistics companies between Johannesburg and Cape Town. Trucks with their company name moved goods across provinces every single day. Warehouses, contracts, international partners. It was a serious empire. And everyone in the family knew one thing. When Mandla stepped down, control of that empire would pass to his children. But Mandla's health had not been the same lately. He was still strong, still respected, but he got tired faster. He attended fewer meetings. He trusted others to handle more responsibilities. Quietly, inheritance conversations had started happening behind closed doors. Nothing official yet, but everyone could feel it coming. For years, Ayanda had acted like the future CEO. She was the eldest. She was confident. She spoke loudly in meetings and made sure everyone knew she was Mandla's firstborn. She believed the majority share of the company would naturally go to her. In her mind, it wasn't even a question. But something changed 6 months ago. Mandla started calling Zola into private meetings. He asked for her opinion about contracts. He sent her to represent the company at smaller negotiations. At first Ayanda laughed it off. Dad just feels sorry for her, she once said. But when Mandla began praising Zola's ideas in front of senior managers, Ayanda's smile started to fade. Zola wasn't loud, but she was smart. She studied the numbers carefully. She noticed inefficiencies in transport routes. She suggested digital tracking upgrades that actually increased profit. Slowly, employees began respecting her. Some even preferred working with her. That shift unsettled Ayanda more than she would ever admit. If Zola's place in the family could be questioned, then her place in the business could be questioned too. If people believed she wasn't truly Mandla's daughter, her inheritance could disappear. Her shares could vanish. Her voice could be silenced. Suddenly, the DNA test didn't look like a cruel joke anymore. It looked strategic. It wasn't about discovering the truth. It was about creating doubt at the perfect time. It was about planting a seed before lawyers and wills became official. Ayanda hadn't tried to embarrass Zola because of jealousy alone. She was trying to eliminate competition. For weeks, Zola tried to act like none of it mattered. He went to work. She attended meetings. She smiled when people looked at her a little too long. But inside, her mind was loud. Every whisper felt heavier. Every silence felt suspicious. Even when she was alone in her room at night, Ayanda's voice echoed in her head. Now we can finally find out who your real father is. It wasn't just embarrassment anymore. It was mental torture. She hated that the doubt was slowly creeping in. She trusted her mother. She loved her father. But the human mind is fragile. When enough people question your identity, you start questioning it too. Zola realized she couldn't live like this, half confident, half broken. One evening, after staring at the unopened DNA kit sitting in her drawer for almost a month, she made a decision. Not for Ayanda. Not for the family. For herself. I need peace, she whispered. The next morning she carefully followed the instructions. She sealed the samples, placed them back in the box, and arranged for a private courier pickup. No announcement. No drama. No social media post. She didn't tell her cousins. She didn't even tell her father. This was her battle and she would fight it quietly. For the first time since the party she felt a small sense of control. But while Zola was choosing silence and dignity, Ayanda was choosing strategy. In public she acted calm and concerned. If anyone asked about the birthday incident she would sigh and say, I was only joking. Zola is too sensitive. She played the innocent older sister perfectly. Behind closed doors, though, she was having very different conversations. Zola later overheard fragments of one talk between Ayanda and their father. Ayanda's voice was soft but sharp. Dad, I'm just saying, what if there's something we don't know? What if this affects the company? Investors care about family stability. We need to be sure. Not true blood. Those words spread quietly like smoke. Ayanda wasn't screaming accusations anymore. She was planting professional doubt, business doubt, inheritance doubt. Zola realized something painful but clear. This was never about sisterly teasing. This was a slow attempt to erase her position in the family and in the empire. But this time, Zola wasn't running from the storm. She was waiting for the truth to speak. When the email finally came, Zola's hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped her phone. She locked herself in her bedroom before opening it. Her heart was beating fast, like her whole future was inside that one message. She clicked. Inconclusive result due to sample contamination. For a few seconds she just stared at the screen. She read it again. And again. Inconclusive. Not confirmed. Not denied. Just nothing. It felt like the ground disappeared under her feet. Before she could even process it properly, Ayanda somehow found out. Zola never told her, but news traveled fast in their family. By that evening, Ayanda was already talking about it loudly at dinner. See, she said with a small dramatic laugh. Even the lab can't confirm her. That says a lot. Their cousins exchanged looks. An uncle cleared his throat awkwardly. Mandla said nothing, but his silence felt heavier than words. Zola sat there feeling like the air was being sucked out of the room. She wanted to scream that contamination happens, that labs make mistakes, that this proved nothing. But the damage was already spreading. The next day at the office she noticed two managers whispering when she walked past. Someone stopped including her in email threads. Investors who once greeted her warmly now seemed distant. It wasn't just personal anymore. It was professional. Zola felt like she was suffocating. For one night she allowed herself to cry. She cried for her mother. She cried for her childhood. She cried because she was tired of defending her existence. But when the tears dried, something inside her hardened. If Ayanda wanted to play games, Zola would change the rules. This time there would be no home test kit, no casual results, no room for rumors. She contacted an independent legal team in Pretoria that specialized in court-admissible DNA investigations. She scheduled a verified test with strict handling procedures, documented samples, and official legal oversight. This would not be gossip. This would be evidence. When Ayanda heard about it, she smirked and said, "Wow, that's extreme." But Zola simply replied, calm and steady, "No. This is necessary. Because if her sister wanted war, Zola would not bring emotions. She would bring proof." Months passed and the waiting felt endless. Zola stopped checking her email every hour, but the anxiety never fully left. She focused on work, kept her head down, and avoided family gatherings. The legal DNA process was strict and slow, with verified samples and official documentation. This wasn't something that could be rushed. Then one afternoon her phone rang. The caller ID showed a name that made her sit up straight. Advocate Themba Khumalo, the family lawyer. He never called her directly. His voice was calm but serious. "Zola, I need you to come to my office. This matter is confidential. It's important." Her stomach dropped. On the drive there, her mind kept jumping between two fears. Either the results would confirm every rumor Ayanda had planted, or they would finally clear her name. Relief or heartbreak. There was no middle ground. When she arrived, the atmosphere in the office felt heavy. Advocate Khumalo didn't waste time with small talk. He closed the door, placed a sealed file on the desk, and looked at her carefully. "The verified DNA results are back," he said. Zola held her breath. "They confirmed that Mandla Ndlovu is your biological father." For a split second, her body relaxed. Her eyes filled with tears. She knew it. She had always known it. Her mother had never lied. But the lawyer didn't smile. He didn't look relieved. "There is another matter," he continued quietly. Zola frowned, her heart starting to race again. The expanded verification process required cross-referencing family DNA markers already on legal record. During that review, something unexpected was discovered. He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Ayanda Ndlovu is not biologically related to Mandla." The room went silent. Zola blinked, thinking she had misheard him. "What?" "The records show that Mandla legally acknowledged and raised Ayanda as his daughter. But biologically, she is not his." The words felt unreal. The weapon that was meant to destroy her had just exploded in the opposite direction. Zola didn't feel victorious. She felt frozen. This wasn't what she came for. She only wanted to defend her name. Instead, she was now holding a truth that could shatter her entire family. And suddenly, everything was about to change. Zola sat there, staring at the file on the desk like it might suddenly disappear. Her mind was moving, but her body felt still. Advocate Khumalo gently opened the sealed documents and began explaining everything slowly, carefully. Years ago, before Nomusa married Mandla, she had been in a short relationship with another man. It didn't last. According to the documents, she found out she was pregnant after the relationship had already ended. Around that same time, Mandla came back into her life. He loved her deeply. When she told him the truth, he made a choice that would shape all of their lives. He chose to stay. He chose to marry her. And he chose to raise Ayanda as his own daughter. There were legal papers confirming it, acknowledgement forms, adoption recognition documents, and sealed agreements. Mandla had signed everything quietly. He never treated Ayanda differently. He never told anyone. Not relatives. Not business partners. Not even Ayanda herself. Only the lawyer and the sealed files knew the full truth. Nomusa carried that secret to her grave. Zola felt her throat tighten. All these years Ayanda had walked confidently, believing she was the rightful firstborn, the unquestioned heir. She had built her identity around that certainty. And now, that certainty was fragile. The irony was painful. Ayanda had demanded DNA proof to humiliate Zola. She had pushed for verification. She had shouted about true blood in front of everyone. And in doing so, she had unknowingly exposed the very secret that could shake her own foundation. Zola's humiliation suddenly felt different. It hadn't disappeared, but it had shifted. The shame that was thrown at her was no longer hers to carry. The weapon meant to destroy her had turned around. But instead of feeling victorious, Zola felt heavy. This wasn't just revenge. This was a family secret. This was her mother's past. This was her father's sacrifice. Mandla had loved Ayanda enough to protect her from stigma and gossip her entire life, and now that protection was at risk. Zola realized something powerful in that quiet office. Truth doesn't just defend. It reveals. It exposes. Changes everything. And once it comes out, it can never go back inside the envelope. The meeting was arranged quietly with no extended relatives, no employees, no audience. Just immediate family and advocate Kumalo. It took place in the large living room of the Durban house where they had grown up. The same room where birthdays were celebrated. The same room where Zola had once been humiliated. Ayanda walked in first, dressed sharply, her chin lifted with confidence. She looked at Zola with a small, knowing smile, like she was about to witness the final chapter of her victory. She probably thought this was the moment everything would be confirmed, that Zola would finally be exposed. Mandla was already seated, looking tired but serious. Zola sat quietly across from him, her hands folded in her lap. She wasn't shaking this time. She wasn't crying. She had already processed the shock. Advocate Kumalo cleared his throat and placed a thick file on the coffee table. "These are the verified, court-admissible DNA results," he said calmly. Ayanda leaned back confidently. "Finally," she muttered. The lawyer opened the file and spoke clearly. "The results confirm that Zola Ndlovu is biologically the daughter of Mandla Ndlovu." The room went still. Ayanda's smile faded, but only slightly. He shrugged. "Hey, good for her." But the lawyer wasn't finished. "There is an additional finding that emerged during the verification process." Now Mandla looked uneasy. His fingers tightened around the armrest of his chair. Advocate Kumalo continued. "Ayanda Ndlovu is not biologically related to Mandla Ndlovu. Legal documents confirm that Mandla chose to raise her as his daughter before marriage." It felt like thunder had exploded inside the room. Silence fell heavy and thick. Mandla's face went pale. He looked at the floor, unable to speak. Ayanda blinked rapidly, shaking her head as if the words didn't make sense. "No," she whispered. "That's not true." Her hands began to tremble. The same hands that once held up a DNA test kit in front of a crowd. For years she had tried to prove that Zola was the outsider. She had questioned her blood, her place, her identity. And now the truth was staring back at her. Zola didn't smile. She didn't say, "I told you so." He just sat there calm and steady. Because sometimes the loudest revenge isn't shouting. It's silence, when the truth speaks for you. The silence in the room didn't last long. It broke with a sound no one expected, Ayanda's sob. At first it was just a shaky breath. Then her shoulders started trembling. No, this can't be true," she said, her voice cracking. She looked at Mandla, her eyes full of confusion and hurt. "You lied to me? My whole life." Mandla's voice was heavy when he finally spoke. "I didn't lie to hurt you. I kept it to protect you." "Protect me from what?" Ayanda shouted, tears running down her face. "From being unwanted? From being a mistake." The words hung in the air like knives. Mandla stood up slowly. He looked older in that moment, like the weight of the secret had finally caught up to him. "You were never unwanted," he said firmly. "I chose you. I loved your mother and I chose to love you as my own. I didn't want you growing up hearing whispers. I didn't want anyone treating you differently." Ayanda covered her face with her hands. The same woman who had laughed at Zola in front of a crowd was now falling apart in private. She started blaming their late mother, Nomusa. "She should have told me. She should have trusted me with the truth." But Nomusa wasn't there to defend herself. Zola stood quietly near the window, watching everything unfold. She didn't feel joy. She didn't feel revenge. She felt complicated. Hurt didn't disappear just because the truth had shifted. The pain of that birthday humiliation was still real. The whispers were still real. But she didn't want Ayanda destroyed. The same sister who tried to humiliate her was now drowning in the very shame she had tried to create. And Zola understood something important in that moment. Identity is more than blood. Mandla had raised Ayanda. He had loved her. That love was real even if the DNA was not. Zola finally spoke, her voice calm. "You are still his daughter. Nothing changes that." Ayanda looked up, surprised. And for the first time in weeks, Zola felt strong. Not because she had won, but because she chose dignity over cruelty. After everything settled, Mandla called Zola and Ayanda together one last time. The tension in the room was thick, but this meeting wasn't about confrontation. It was about closure and fairness. Mandla told them he had decided to amend his will. Not to punish anyone, not to settle scores, but to make sure everything reflected truth and justice. Zola listened quietly as he explained that she would remain a major shareholder in the company. Her contributions, her insight, and her dedication were recognized. Ayanda would also keep her shares. But Manla suggested she take some time away from the business to reflect, heal, and understand the family dynamics. Ayanda nodded slowly, humbled and shaken. No longer the confident, untouchable sister who had once tried to humiliate her. For Zola, the feeling was surreal. She wasn't celebrating with loud cheers or dramatic gestures. Instead, she felt a quiet, steady power rising inside her. The DNA test, the whispers, the humiliation, all of it had been turned upside down. It hadn't destroyed her. It had revealed clarity. It had revealed truth. And it had shown her the strength she carried all along. As she walked through the offices, employees greeted her with respect. Some who had doubted her before now looked at her differently. She felt the weight of responsibility and the spark of leadership all at once. And in her mind, a single thought repeated, sharp and clear. She tried to erase my bloodline, but the truth rewrote hers instead. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice, identity, and stepping into her own power. And Zola knew she would never let anyone shake her sense of self again.